I listened to a Tim Ferriss podcast this morning, and one of the things that he spoke about was the difference between efficient and effective. And I think recently there's been a lot of bias towards being efficient during practices as opposed to being effective. And so it's possible to be both efficient and effective, and it's possible to be less efficient but effective, and it's possible to be less effective but more efficient. And so the goal probably is to be both efficient and effective, but ultimately being effective is more important than being efficient. And so I think a lot of times we look at a practice, and I know I did this when I was a young coach and a young trainer, and I wanted to see, how the practice moved from point A to B to C, and that there was very little downtime, no standing lines, and that was kind of how the quality of a practice was judged. And so I think we have this idea that a practice should be orderly, organized, straight lines, everything happening, progressing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, in a logical, linear order. And while none of those things in and of themselves are negatives, when we're too worried about becoming efficient, sometimes we lose out on the effectiveness because some of the more effective drills are going to be a little bit more chaotic and therefore less efficient. Playing games, or if I'm practicing dribbling, our drills can be very efficient when we're doing stationary ball handling or straight line drills, but when we do something like a dribbling tag game, it's going to be more chaotic, it's going to be less efficient, but from my perspective it's going to be more effective. And so too often I think we're caught looking and judging practices or evaluating practices based on efficiency, where we should be evaluating them based on effectiveness. And so what the perception of something is, and our perception of what a practice should look like, nice orderly progressions, straight lines, nice and efficient, really isn't the number one thing that we should be looking for when evaluating that practice. Instead, we want to look at the effectiveness. How much do the tasks represent what's going to happen in a game? How often are players challenged to make decisions? How often are players challenged to go beyond their current level or beyond their comfort zone? And to me, these are the things that are going to build an effective practice, but they're also going to tend to increase the inefficiencies in the practice. And so simply looking at whether or not the practice is efficient, we may miss out on whether or not the practice is effective. And ultimately, we want to be effective in terms of using practice to enhance skill development, and especially skill development that's going to transfer to game performance.